Thanks again, everyone, for coming. This is a Musical Family Tree Smarter Scene Series, Volume 5, DIY touring, and building your EPK, that's Electronic Press Kit, which is an aid of touring. We've done this presentation once before, but we refined it a little bit, so I have some more information for you. And again, the Smarter Scene Series is an educational series that Musical Family Tree, a 501c3, puts on. About quarterly, hopefully. We also partner with a lot of other educational programming in town for professional development of musicians. This time we're partnering with the Arts Council of Indianapolis, Giacomo, and we're hosted by Sam Ash. So thanks for having us. Giacomo Pete's over here if anyone wants it. And this is my co-presenter, Natalie Glidewell. We'll get to that in just a second. So, who am I? I'm Andy D. I toured full-time for 4 years with my wife, who's also here, wrangling our son. We did two international tours and several domestic tours. At our height, we played about 131 shows a year. How do we know this? Stats! We'll get to that later. We recorded everything. We did it legit. We claimed all of our income for the government, which has many benefits. We'll talk about that. Some of the people we supported: Electric Six, Harmar Superstar, Andrew WK, Two Live Crew, that was amazing, Blowfly, rest in peace, of Montreal, Big Frida, and a bunch of others we're honored to share the stage with.
And my name is Natalie Glidewell. I'm currently the marketing director for Hi-Fi and MOKB Presents. I've been a special events marketer for about 3-4 years now, and I've been with Hi-Fi and MOKB for 2. I also have a little bit of experience in tour marketing specifically, and I go to way too many shows. So excited to talk a little bit about how to better market your tours and your shows specifically with you all.
So the big question is, why tour? We tackled this a bit last time, but it bears repeating. There are a lot of folks who play shows around town and saturate your market, and it's kind of when you know it's time to get out. But why tour? So we're in a world of streamed music, YouTube. A lot of mediation is happening, but the live experience is unreproducible. As Natalie was saying, she's been to too many shows. Not really possible to go to too many shows. It is an experience that we can't really duplicate, though many people try. It's also the best way to expose your art to your peers and potential champions. It's a little more difficult these days to find a revenue stream for professional music, original music. But one of the tried and true methods is your live experience, is the live show, and we'll talk about some more about how to monetize that and how to make a living at that if you choose to. But we'll also talk about the other degrees of success that you don't have to do this professionally, but to infuse your live show and your touring experience with a little bit of professionalism is a good idea anyway. It's also the best sales pitch and distribution method for your own merch, because you are your own distributor. You can see some of our merch. So that jolly group of young men up there is in the Netherlands, and they all bought the same shirt, and I am fine with that. That was really easy sell, and they want to match, so just let them do that. In the upper right-hand corner there, that's a clip-on rat tail. That was one of our most original merch ideas. Super cheap to make. Sold all of them. My wife made all of them because I can't braid. We had some braided and we had unbraided. And all it took was like cheap weave and like a clip and some hot glue. It was amazing. When you get into the world of merch too, that hat is from No Bad Ideas, a local company, makes amazing apparel, and all of those were unique because they all used a different cut of the pattern. So it was a limited run. Anyway, and believe it or not, that's a CD up there. We sold a lot of CDs. At the height of our touring, 45% of our revenue was from merch, so you can't sleep on merch. Almost half of our revenue. I love Indianapolis. Prince is one of my favorite artists. He's from Minneapolis, guys. I hear that a lot, though. So it's actually the best way to rep your city. If you're not touring, if you're just playing in your own town, you can't really get out there and show people what's going on in your city. You know, you're saturating your own market. You're playing way too many shows locally. You're cutting your draw. Not all your friends can come to all of your shows. But if you go just a little bit away, Louisville, a couple hours, Cincinnati, Dayton, you can show people what's going on in your scene and your music community, and you can network with other music communities, which is actually really, really fun, and bring them to your city. You saturate your own market, that's what it was. And touring is fun. This is us in a green room in the Europe somewhere in the Europe. I think that's one of the O2s, and that's with Electric Six. They're one of our best touring buds, and they're one of my favorite bands of all time, so big time. All right, booking. So, first thing about booking is know when to book. This is kind of just a very, very brief rundown of like, you know, how to go about booking. So Natalie can speak more to this, but shows are set up a long time in advance. Depending on the circuit you're doing, like if you're doing like punk house shows, you know, you can maybe get some last minute holes filled that way. But if you're looking for, you know, more, you know, I don't know, established venues, you want to give them a 3 to 4 month lead time from the initial pitch, and then follow up thereafter. So that's just the basic timing of things. So if you're looking to book in early spring, now is about the time you want to start. So. Okay, also, if you're looking at different markets, just be aware of their own seasonality, their own timing. So if you're going to play college towns, be mindful of the academic calendar. I've totally shown up in Athens, Georgia, like the last night of finals, and there were only like 2 people there, and they were both really, really deep into a Molly trip. And they just ended up like rolling around on our merch table. And they were like, we're done with finals. Everyone else is in finals, but we finished ours early. And I was like, okay, this is a weird night. And it's because I didn't know we were playing a college town. And I should have known that. Days of the week. Okay, so you guys go to shows. You know when the good days for shows are. Friday, Saturday. Thursday's a little better. Wednesday's, you know, a little worse than those. You get to Tuesday, Monday. Those are going to be, it depends on who you are, where you're playing. Could be some rough shows. Sometimes Sunday shows work. But you should think about where you are and which day of the week you are in your route.
I think, too, something to note is that when you're looking to play a specific room or a specific venue, you want to give them date options. The way Hi-Fi books is we put holds on the calendars, and we'll have multiple holds on a single day. So if you come at a venue and just say, I have to play your venue on the 21st, it's likely that there are 3 other bands ahead of you who are trying to play that day, and it's likely that you won't get it, especially if it's a national tour that's trying to come through. So providing each market a small date range or dates that could potentially work on your route is going to help you a lot more and help you get any date at that room as opposed to none.
Do you want to talk about challenging holds too, and like how that works, kind of?
Yeah. So if, say, most venues won't ever give a first hold, so they'll start with a second hold and then third and fourth and fifth and onward from there. But say if you are really targeting a specific date and that's the only date you could play that market and you really want to play that venue, you can say, can I challenge the 21st? And the venue can therefore just make the executive decision to confirm you for that date, and all of the other holds will go away and you'll be booked. So that's just something to keep in mind too. If you have a specific date target in mind, you can challenge and let the venue know, and and kind of advocate for yourself in that way. But another way to book too when you're routing is see if there is a show that's already booked and confirmed that you could come on as support, that you could kind of piggyback on. We get that quite a bit in Hi-Fi and some of our smaller rooms and smaller shows that we do.
And that leads into the research part. So, you know, a lot of the times, okay, you've never been to a particular market before. You've never been to that city before. The internet is your friend. You can you know, answer some of these questions that strengthen your case to challenge a hold. Look at the venue. Do they have a, you know, sometimes some venues have like a dance party every Thursday night. You know, will your act work on that night? Like in Charlotte, North Carolina, we always played a Thursday night there. We knew in our routing that we were going to go play Shiprocked at Snug Harbor because it was an awesome dance party. We fit with it. We did really well. They paid us well. The audience was, you know, were receptive to it. And there was a built-in crowd. And the sound system actually, being a DJ night, worked with what my wife and I did, which just required two mics and an iPod most of the time. So stuff like that helps piggybacking on an existing built-in show with a built-in crowd. Establishing a reliable contact at a venue. We'll get to that a little bit here. Again, look up other bands you might fit with for booking. If you've never been to a show before, or to a particular town before, a particular city, particular market, just do research, see, like, you know, in advance who's been playing in that show, or shows in that town. Especially with that 3-month lead up, you know, you might be in a cycle now. You can look at like what shows are going on now at the venues you want to book at, and see like, hey, some of these make sense. And then when you know, go to your contacts, or you challenger, or you go to challenger old, you can say, hey, I know these guys just played. Hopefully they had a good draw. We would fit really well with them. Natalie will talk more about that sort of situation in the electronic press kit section. IndieOnTheMove.com. I have this pipe dream of doing something like what Indie on the Move does, just for Indianapolis artists, to keep a database or a spreadsheet at least of good contacts around the, you know, on the road. This is basically an online database of active venues, good contacts at those venues, good press contacts in those markets to make sure you can book and have the best show possible. So they do a really good job. And it's my dream that Musical Family Tree will one day have this sort of living archive for Indiana artists. I said that last year when I gave this presentation. Still no closer to it, but maybe one day. The pitch. Natalie's going to talk way more about this, but again, research. You want to keep it short. Link to your videos. Usually, you know, your music. Everyone knows it's good to be able to describe your music. It's better to just get people to listen to it real quick. And if they're doing this professionally, they know what works at their venue. They know the kind of acts that come in regularly, the kind of built-in audience who will respond to what, and they'll know if they're doing it right. They'll know who you'll fit with best. And also be honest with your talent buyer, your booker, about your history. Say you've never been there before, but hey, we've never played Columbus, but we've played Dayton, and we did this much, and we played with this band, and so, you know, there's a similar market. We could probably fit there without too much disruption in your normal show culture. But if you've never played before, just be honest with that. And be professional. Like, don't be afraid to show that you've done this research. It'll go a long way. It says tip Vulcan Army. Our first tour booker were called Vulcan Army, and they were from Nashville, Tennessee. And they were actually in a band called the Winter Sounds. It was members of the Winter Sounds who just started booking their own tours. But to give themselves a little more legitimacy, they actually set up their own booking agent, and they called it Vulcan Army. And faked it until they made it, and ended up actually booking for other bands, including ours. Because once you have a route established, once you've made contacts, why make your friends reinvent the wheel when they could pay you $25 a show and you could just do a route for them modeled on the route you've done? You know what I mean? So, or whatever percentages you work out with them. So, but don't be afraid to show that you've done your research on markets that you haven't been to before even.
Also, to piggyback off of that, things to just include in that initial pitch email. Our talent buyer will tell you that all he wants is a link to your YouTube channel and your most recent YouTube video and a link to your Spotify page. Most talent buyers just want to be able to listen to your music as quickly as possible. They want to be able to see a video or a live performance and get an idea or understanding of what your live show is like, what your vibe is like, what your music is like. That's ultimately going to be the deciding factor on if they're going to book a show with you or not. If you reach out and don't link to any of your music and don't initially provide them anything to look at or go off of, you just say, hey, I want to play your venue, that's not going to get you very far. And if you don't have a Spotify, any sort of online streaming platform where your music lives also suffices. So Bandcamp, SoundCloud, all the above. Social media links are helpful too, because promoters and venues are going to want to see what kind of following you have, if you have one at all. They want to see how many likes you have on Facebook, how many Twitter followers you have, how many Instagram followers you have, and how active you are. Because if you don't have somewhat of an existing audience base, there's not a lot of people to market to. And something that is also really helpful if you've toured before, noting what bands and artists that you've played with, if you've supported some acts on a tour or just one-off shows in your respective cities, that's really helpful because that promoter can market to those artists' fans if they're a little bit more notable than you.
Like you saw what I did at the beginning when I introduced myself, it wasn't just a humble brag, it's good marketing to tell people who you've played with before.
Absolutely. As a marketer, it already tells me, like, if Andy D is trying to play one of our shows, I know exactly what shows he would fit. I know what an Andy D fan would look like. I know what kind of audience to market to. It's just incredibly helpful. It's a really huge thing when I see bands doing that, because you think it would be like common sense, second nature, but it's not. And then if you have an electronic press kit, attaching that or linking to that is also huge. It's a sense of professionalism. It makes it seem like you have your shit together and things are a little bit more established. So we'll get to that later too.
Where to book? Is this back to me or is this you? Routing. So, what's really awesome about living in Indianapolis, the crossroads of America, we actually have a lot of good, very accessible markets in the Midwest and Southeast. I have a graphic coming up that we called our money route because the overhead was so low and the guarantees were so high that we knew if we hit it every 8 weeks or so, 6 to 8 weeks, we'd be making, a good portion of our income that way. But if you just follow the interstates a little bit, it really works. Louisville to Nashville, or to Lexington, then to Nashville, Knoxville, kind of zigzagging Chattanooga, all the way down to Atlanta. Couple hour drives each night, not so bad. We always try to keep the drives between 2 and 5 hours between shows. You'll see our touring vehicle here in a little bit. We toured in a little yellow hatchback because we could. It was my wife and I, like I said, and all of our merch, and pretty easy. If you get larger than a 3-piece, we understand that's not super doable, but and the struggles of a tour van are myriad. Have you guys ever heard of the band Shovels and Rope? Dude, my favorite story. My favorite story was before, just right when they were starting to break, they were friends with our booking agent, and their van broke down in the Deep South. And our booking agent was like, "Hey, we see that your routing works out. If you could deliver this van to them in New Orleans, that would be really awesome." Or maybe it was Mobile. So I was like, "I will drive your van from this mechanic in Mississippi. I forget where, Hattiesburg, Mississippi, to Mobile, Alabama, if you promise me that I won't be riding dirty when I do this, because I'm in the Deep South and I'm not going to break any laws." And they said, "Absolutely, it's totally clean." So I did it, and it worked out. I don't know if they'll remember that story, but it was crazy. But the tour vehicle situation is real. The struggles are real. Try to be as efficient with your overhead as possible, because saving money equals making money. Anchor markets, this is what we talked about. I mentioned Chattanooga before. Chattanooga, in the heart of our tour life, became an anchor market for us. That was one where we could go get one of the highest guarantees that we ever had on a weekend. We wanted to make time for that. It took 6 shows before we made that our anchor market and found our audience there. But by that time, we were selling out like 400 cap videos, which was huge for us. So other anchor markets we've had are Greenville, South Carolina, Wichita, Kansas, and Walla Walla, Washington. All very close to each other, so very convenient to hit those. But knowing that we had those on our route helped the morale and the pocketbook of the times that the days we had to fill in between those places. And actually then we were able to, those fill-in dates, we were able to eventually turn into profitable anchor markets in turn. College towns, depending on your genre of music, there's a lot of money to be had in college towns. A lot of folks go to shows. A lot of people have time to go to shows in college towns. And I always say there's a siren song to music cities. A lot of people want to play these cities. I say beware of them. You can do it. I've had good shows in these cities. It's very tough. It's a saturated market. These are places where everyone's a musician. Everyone's going to everyone else's show every other night. It is so hard to get people out to a show in these towns. Nashville, Austin, New York, LA, Seattle, Atlanta. You know who you are. But I've had good shows here, but I do not count on these places. If anything, they might get a Wednesday or something on my routing, just because I know weekends are going to be so saturated. Okay, so here was one of our money routes. You can see even some of the actual venues that we played, and that's to Atlanta and back, and that's a good solid week and a half of tour dates. You can drive to Atlanta in a day. That's an 8-hour drive. So money-wise, in a hatchback wasn't so bad, even when gas was over $3 a gallon, and that was huge in keeping our overhead low. So it's not ideal to have to fill the bill yourself if you haven't been to a place before. But again, that research that we talked about earlier, knowing who you fit with, knowing the kind of bands that you've played with before, knowing the energy. It doesn't have to even match genre. If you match energy, it's a good solid pitch to give to people. Like, hey, maybe it doesn't exactly fit. I'm a rapper, but we can play with punk bands, we can play with metal bands, we can play with hardcore bands, we can play with DJ nights, we can play dance music. If the energy's up, we're an up energy band, and that works more than genre sometimes.
I would say anymore too, a lot of the times managers, when it's the venue's responsibility to fill the bill, they want to see support be drastically different than the headlining act. We've had, Low Cut Connie, for example, is like an alt-country kind of Americana singer-songwriter. He wanted a hip-hop artist opening his show, so we booked a rapper to open for Low Cut Connie. It was great. Awesome. It was an awesome show. We just had Khaki King at Hi-Fi, and their manager was adamant that, hey, we want someone who's not a solo singer-songwriter with a guitar. We want someone different than Khaki King. So even when you're trying to add yourself to an existing bill or you're responsible for filling your own, Something that's sonically similar is always a good idea, but if you stray away, that just means that you're broadening the potential audience for that show. And there's a greater chance of more people coming out because the people will come out who are interested in the punk rock and love you and support you, but that other band that's different than you also has an audience who can bring people out. So really that's kind of what you always want to think about is who's going to give some kind of a draw, who's going to help push the show and bring people out.
And the more you think about that, the more you think about filling this bill, even in a city you've never been to, just like, hey, you know, we've done shows like this before. If you pitch that to your talent buyer and that gives you a stronger case to challenge those holds and get a show actually confirmed, which helps with your routing. Negotiating a guarantee and hospitality. Do you talk about this later a little bit? Okay, so we'll get to that. So guarantees, you talk about guarantee versus door deal. Door deal, hospitality, that's your buyout, your per diem, coffee, tea, we'll talk about that a little bit. If you're a touring band, it's just, you know, if you're filling the bill, if you're pitching the bill, a whole cloth, that's one thing. Trading shows, stuff like that, you know, people that you've networked with shows here, when they toured here and then you go to their city, always an easy pitch. But you want to advocate for yourself at all times. The middle spot on the bill is ideal for touring bands. Opener can be okay, but you want to be sandwiched ideally between local people. So many times we've had locals say, hey, our drummer has to get up and work in the morning, can we go first? Or something like that. And it was just one of those things where it's like, I have to level with you. All of the people that came for you are not going to stay around for me because they don't know what we are. If they stick around, I guarantee you they'll have a good time. But it's one of those things where it's like, if you got to be a buddy if you're a host band, and try and get the touring bands on the middle spot. And then when you are on tour, you have to advocate for yourself for that middle spot. Promoting, we'll talk about that. Okay.
So to go off of like building your show, once you are confirmed, the three most common deal types that you'll probably see are the flat guarantee, which is just a flat payout. It's a lot of the times at our level for a local band or a regional touring band, $150 to $250. I don't see it getting greater than that often. But if you're able to find specific venues or bars or pubs that just consistently offer flat guarantees, here in town, Tin Roof is a good example. It may not be the greatest spot to play in town, but that's an example of a venue that always offers flat guarantees, and they do live music 6 nights a week. Really, in terms of overhead, that's your most ideal deal that you want for yourself. If you're like, hey, I need at least $100 flat to make this work, advocate for yourself in that way. If it's a 5-hour drive, 6-hour drive, and you know it's not going to be worth it if you're getting any less than that, fight for it or don't do that show. Another common deal type that you'll see, probably more common, is the door deal. So it's just a percentage of gross sales, typically after expenses. So after the sound guys paid, the door guys are paid, all of that. All of the overhead, basically once all of the bills are paid. A solid percentage that you should ask for is at least 50%. I would say 60. Getting to the 70, 80 range, a lot of promoters aren't really going to budge or work with you with that high of a percentage. It just depends. And then a flat versus is probably the most artist friendly because it's that flat guarantee. But if the percentage of the door is greater than the flat, then you get the higher amount. So either way, you're getting that flat $250 or $150. But if you sell a bunch of tickets and a percentage of the sales, of the gross sales is greater than that flat, then you're making more money than you initially expected. So those are 3 common deal types. A really good resource where I kind of learned about all of the different promoter and artist settlements is Keeping It with Chris G. He has a podcast. He basically does a rundown online of all of the different deal types and settlements that promoters and artists can come across. It's really informative and really effective. So that's something I would definitely check out when you're looking to book your own tour and you're not 100% sure on the kind of deals you should be aiming for and what kind of money you should be looking for from them.
And in reality, the flat versus being the most artist-friendly, you're not likely to be able to negotiate that your first time in a market. That's okay, but that's something like the 7th time we played Chattanooga, that's a good time to say, hey, this is what this is what we're asking for.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably the most common deal type for a standard hi-fi show when a national or regional touring act with an agent is coming through and they're pretty established. Their agent will advocate for that because they know that their band is not going to play for any less than that flat. And then if they sell tickets, they want their band to make more money. So. And then some things that you can negotiate when you're building your show and kind of negotiating your offer terms and your deal terms are merch cut for one. We sometimes take a merch cut. If we do, it's soft only, which is t-shirts and like knickknacks, posters, that kind of stuff.
Clip-on rat tails, probably? Okay.
Clip-on rat tails. So any soft kind of retail merch, if the venue is trying to take a cut of that, keep it low. I wouldn't say any more than 15, and if they're pushing for more than 15%, that's pretty taxing. And typically a venue or promoter will never take a cut of hard merch, which is like your recorded music and your like hard music materials. So just know that you can fight and negotiate to keep 100% of your merch sales, but it is often that a venue or promoter will try to take a percentage of the soft merch. Hospitality is something you should try to work in. A lot of small to mid-sized venues can typically do dinner buyouts, so $10 to $15 per head, which is per band member, and then band beer and water. That's, to me, the bare minimum, and if they're not able to offer much more than that, then that could be a red flag, and you should be weary. But if they're offering you like a high flat and you don't need dinner buyouts or band beer or whatever, then that's kind of up to you to negotiate. Another thing to work out is drink tickets are sometimes an option, or a bar tab. Just know that you can ask for those kinds of things depending on the venue and promoter. Other things that you can negotiate and be in charge of if you're completely routing and building your own tour is when you want to announce and go on sale, what the door and show times should be that work for you, but could also work for the venue, and what kind of billing and support you want built into your show.
Here's some red flags, warning signs that you might not want to take up a show that you solicited. If it's pay to play, we have a hard no on pay to play. I've gotten into some really gross situations when it comes to show cultures in various places. I've never played a city that was only pay to play though, so those are typically predatory. You want to stay away from them. You should be, shouldn't have to say this, but as a professional musician, you should be getting paid to play, not the other way around. Lack of curation, had this happen to me early on, actually, and it was a pay-to-play situation, and it wasn't curated. It was kind of like, it was really gross. It was, at the door, they just asked everyone who you're here to see, tallied it up, and paid you based on that. So you're having your friends pay them to pay you, which is really gross. And then it wasn't curated at all. It was like me, like a show tune singer in a punk band. I was like, I played with punk bands before, but I don't know what this show tune singer is doing right now. And that was really weird. Like all together, it didn't quite work. So if you get signs of a lack of curation to the show, then that's a problem. No advance. We had to walk away from a problematic show. We've only flaked once on tour. It was for legal reasons, but there was also no advance on that, and being kind of, surprised. You don't want, there's enough surprises on the road. You don't want that many surprises, particularly when it's coming from the place that is holding your show. So advance means advance information. You should know load-in times. You should talk about hospitality, the stuff you've negotiated. That stuff should all be given to you before you're on tour. No clear contact. If you don't have a person at a venue that you know has set up the show, that's a big warning sign. No online presence if they're not promoting their shows at the venues from the venues end. That's a big warning sign. Of course, you want to push your own, but it's so much more helpful to be working together. And if they don't ask for posters or other other promotional materials beforehand, that could be problematic too. Advancing again. Promoting. You should understand your responsibility versus that of the venue, the promoters. Build an EPK that's coming next. Contact other bands again. That's part of filling the bill to get them motivated. So you can kind of ahead of time once you're booked, get with the other bands that are on the bill and talk to them. Get them whatever posters or flyers information they need. That's making the creative assets. That's your tour poster. Those are your flyers. Talk about building an EPK now.
So an EPK is an electronic press kit, and it's essentially a band's resume, if you will, or their online portfolio. It's the home of all of their assets and likeness. Some really important parts of an EPK and its purpose are it gives a promoter easy access to all of your assets to help promote you and your show. It allows all parties involved with your show to be successful and successfully promote and market. So people show up to watch you play, and so people show up in the venue to drink and buy tickets. And it can be an online landing page. It can be a PDF. It can be a Dropbox folder, a Google Drive. Anymore, I've seen a variety of different EPKs, and it's just kind of whatever works best for that artist. I've also just seen simple marketing letters and Word documents that kind of act as an EPK. So there are a lot of different formats and ways to do it. I've seen entire Wix and WordPress websites for EPKs. So it's all very open to interpretation, open to what works best for you, but there are still really important components and really important pieces that just need to be in all electronic press kits, and we'll get to that next.
Also, just a note, we'll have this in PDF form, this presentation on the Musical Family Tree website, and all these links as well, and maybe the Arts Council if they want it as well, so you know.